Okay, we're
Hello,
on.
hello.
Hello,
Hello,
hello.
hello. Welcome to Human Design Coffee Talk.
Welcome, welcome.
Today we are interviewing my husband.
We talk about him a lot, so figured he should talk for himself.
Yeah, absolutely. His name is Andy Hochstetler. Andy does not know a lot about human design. I'm going to preface the entire conversation with this. He just picks it up through osmosis by living with me. Never attended a class on human design, doesn't really read anything about human design, has had a couple of readings from people in our network. But other than that, so there might be some times where, especially when we get to human and when we go through people's questions that were dropped on Instagram, we might change some of the words so he understands what we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, he's also been to
That would be good.
two high desert human design conferences now.
Yes.
That's true.
Yeah. So, Andy, would you like to introduce yourself with your profile and type and authority?
Okay. I am a 2/4 emotional projector. My authority is by solar plexus.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not 100% sure what that means, but I can see it on the screen. So,
We're like, yeah, you can do it.
all right.
And
Good job.
Andy, what is your definition?
My definition is single definition.
Mm-hmm. And how many channels do you have?
I have one,
And what is that channel?
3740.
I feel like we're quizzing him.
Right? Am I winning?
Yes, you're doing a really good job.
Yeah. No, I'm just curious. Yeah, just show everybody like, where we're at.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, absolutely. Andy is a right angle cross of consciousness, and we're going to get more into that later too. For those of you watching us on YouTube, we have his chart pulled up on the screen, so you can take a little look at that. And we polled people over on Human Design Coffee Talk on Instagram for any questions. We put Andy's chart up and said, what kind of questions would you have for somebody with this chart? So we will go through those as well.
Yeah. I know
Hopefully
one of
they're real world type questions and not human design quizzes.
I think we can make them to where you can understand them. There are some that are just like very normal questions.
All right.
Um, I feel like we could start with, or actually, I'm going to stop sharing now that everybody's gotten to look at your guts. Uh, I feel like one of the reasons we wanted to have you on was to talk about being a projector in the corporate world. And I would love to know just if you could summarize the trajectory of your career, just like how you got started in it, and just kind of knowing the basics of being a projector, that the projector strategy is to wait for the invitation, your authority is to wait for
Mhm.
emotional clarity. Reflecting back on your career, have you seen that playing out for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Like even how I got started in it. So I don't know if people know or not, but I'm in IT. I'm an IT manager. I've been in IT since I was 18 years old. So 26 years now. Been a long time. But I got started because I was doing construction. My dad and my stepdad both worked in construction. So I ended up working in construction and kind of decided that I was done with it. And my mom actually invited me to go take a class with her to get my Microsoft certifications. So I dropped out of high school. About 2 months later, she said, "Hey, I saw this class is happening in town. I think I'm going to go take it. Do you want to go do it?" So I did. And that would have been like 1997. And by May of 98, I was professionally working in IT. And my friends were still in high school. I was, so I kind of got a jump on it early. It's something I'd always been interested in. I'd always played with computers. I'd always messed with technology, taking things apart, putting things together, whether it be mopeds or telephones or computers or whatever. I was always into something, just messing with them. So that's kind of how I got started. I've been a manager a couple of times in my career. Both times have been something that I've been invited to do. I did turn one down one time, and it's like one of the biggest regrets I've had in my career because I ended up working for people that I didn't want to. I wasn't involved in the process of hiring the new manager, and I ended up working for someone that was a very, I guess I'd say corporate-y, right? Like if you didn't play golf and go drink and do all these things, you weren't part of the crowd.
Mm.
So that was kind of a interesting. So from then on, every time I got an invitation to do something, I actually took it. I took the initiative to be like, yeah, I can do this. So
Interesting.
yeah, it's been quite the journey. I don't know. I can elaborate more, but
I'm
uh,
gonna pause. Remember this timestamp, Teresa. Andy, I need
Okay.
you to talk into your microphone more.
oh,
Every time you turn to the side or look, like every time your head just moves slight, like if it's not right in front of you, it sounds really
what
like
if
it
I
just goes
turn
in
it
and
just a
out.
little bit? Okay.
I don't know. Sorry. I just had to say that because you would like say something and it would just like disappear.
That is okay.
That's okay.
If you need to pause too, I should have done it just now because you did say it, but just say
Oh,
pause and I can
okay.
actually just pause the recording on here and
Yeah.
then it'll be really easy. But
Okay.
Oh yeah.
If you want to pause it now, so you
yeah, I mean, if you want to elaborate anything else about what that experience felt like to be invited into something. And something I feel like I hear projectors talk about a lot, which is the teaching too, is it should be a recognized invitation to where
Mm,
people are recognizing you for something specific to you and you feel that recognition. Do
mhm.
you feel like you felt that at different times throughout your career?
Yeah. That's it. That's kind of the main thing that I've always worked for, right? Is that I've always ignored the money aspect of it. I did it because it was something that I enjoyed doing and because I got passion, which is what drove me to keep going. I've always been someone who's very curious. So I enjoy having a job that I have to learn something new every day in order to keep being good at it, right? It's progressing really, really quickly, especially in the world that I'm in now with being in the cloud and all those things that changes literally daily. So that's what keeps me going is the ability to learn new things, the curiosity to keep learning those things, and then the recognition that I get as I do that and excel at those things.
Mm. Do you feel like in your position you are guiding a lot, like managing kind of a team and guiding the team?
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, I do. I have 5 people that work for me now. And they've kind of ranged from like a senior type administrator to someone that's only been doing it for like 2 years. So I've got a bunch of different levels that I get to guide on. So with the more senior people, it's not so much guiding how they do a thing, but just more what they do, right? These are the things that need to be done. They'll kind of do it. The lower level people, then I get to sit and train, guide, and have that individual attention with someone. And I enjoy that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges that you've experienced being a projector in the corporate world?
Oh, a big one is the hours, like the amount of work that I have to put in or have had to in the past anyway. And then I'm also indirect. So it's not always easy for me to be up and alert and awake during the day. I'm more attentive. I think I'm more um I don't know. I'm just more on in the afternoons, evenings, at night. Feels like things come easier.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I noticed that. It's like you turn on at night. Like the
Yeah,
sun
I
goes
feel like
down
I
and
get
you come alive.
energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get
Yeah.
energy. I want to get up. I want to do something. I want to learn something. I want to play a game. Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Specifically around the working hours and being a
Mm,
projector. So we look at projector focus and like 3 hours of projector focus is like 8 hours on a regular for anybody in a 9 to 5.
Mhm.
How do you find balance with that at work with your intense focus on something and the fact that you can get so much done in such a short period of time?
I think a big way that I find balance with that is the ability to be able to guide, right? I can step away from having to focus on the task that I'm doing, and I can kind of step in and show someone else how to do something, talk to someone else, teach them something, and that kind of gets me out of that focused mode. At least it focuses on something else, right? This seems to be a little more easy, a little more fun.
Yeah, and I think that watching you, something that I notice is that in your position, especially when you're working from home, you can take little breaks, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and you have designated focus time at work on your calendar
I
so
do.
that nobody's interrupting you so you can get things done, and
Mhm.
then you can kind of dilly-dally and, be in meetings and do whatever else needs done, but the things that you need to focus on, you actually schedule that.
I
It's
do. Yes,
uninterrupted.
I have to. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I think that was in our questions too. So if we cover any of the questions just naturally throughout our conversation, we don't have to ask them at the end. But
Mhm.
how do you manage the lack of sacral definition that you have with the hours of working a full-time job?
Hmm. I guess I need a better definition of the lack of sacral definition.
So like the lack of, sacrals are
The no motor
energetic
kind of
and
thing.
yeah, we have the motor and we're just kind of go, go, go. Whereas projectors ideally get more rest and don't have to be on as many hours a day as sacrals like to be, I would say, typically.
I guess I find that if I'm doing something that I enjoy, I don't feel like it wears me out as much, right? Like if I'm because I think it's because I'm just so curious about everything that I sit and I study and I read, and those things don't tend to wear me out anywhere near as much as like the meetings and the other things that I have so much of, writing reviews, going to meetings.
Engaging with other people. Like when you
Yeah.
can tinker
Interesting.
and master your
Yeah.
system.
Then it doesn't seem to pull that energy from me. It doesn't feel like it.
Also, you
That
run on
is
you
cool.
run on willpower a lot.
That also, yes.
Yeah, I mean, you do have two motors. The
Yeah.
emotional center is technically a motor, and so is the will center. It's just not the sustainable motor that the
Hmm.
Yeah.
sacral is. But I love that you're pointing out that studying and learning and reading and maybe doing things on your own like that are not as exhausting as having to engage with other people and or maybe be at a certain place at a certain time and be focusing on others.
Yeah, yeah. I think that having a little more freedom in my schedule helps with that too. So I can kind of fit those things in throughout my day to keep me, I don't know, they just keep me engaged. They keep me energized for what I'm doing.
Hmm. I think we should pull up some questions. I'm feeling like we could dive into them as we go instead of Q&A at the end.
Yeah, that makes
So,
sense.
yep, we pulled Instagram, got some questions. And
I'm going to try to see any if there's any work ones right now just because we're on this topic. So
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
there's one that says, "Is it harder to hear himself in the corporate world, which with so much openness?" So what they mean by that is your chart being very open. You're taking in a lot of energy from others. Um, there's just a lot that's inconsistent and fluid for you in your chart.
Hmm.
So I guess that question is asking, is it harder to hear himself? So since you're taking in so much from others,
Hmm.
do you feel like you can connect to your authority or connect to your own inner compass, whatever we want to call it, intuition, um, being so open? I would imagine that working from home is
Yeah.
helpful. It would be very different, like being in an office for 8 hours a day with people.
Right. And that's kind of what I was going to say too. Yeah, I spend a lot of my time, at this desk versus going somewhere. I do try to get into the office a couple of days a week. But the days that I'm in there is I'm more engaged with the people than I am a lot of times the job. So it's, when I do my one-on-ones with my team and when I do like the things that are really important for me to feel like I need to be there in person. I
Ooh.
think that giving that guidance, training somebody on a new system, working some through problems with someone, I like to be there and sit next to someone, and I enjoy the feeling of being there with them as they kind of pick the thing up and get excited about it too.
So you like when the sacral gets excited. You to feed off of that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I
I
think
was
it for me, you kind of get to see that guidance come into play, what effect it has on somebody. It's the immediate feedback of it. I think that it really
Mm-hmm.
I think you're perfectly describing projector success. I love it because this feels so organic because Andy really doesn't know you guys. He doesn't
He
know that that's his
doesn't.
signature.
He doesn't.
I know. It's almost wrong. It's a projector that doesn't know human design.
No, I love it because that's what I was saying to Brandy earlier. That's why this is going to be interesting, is because we can just, it's like you don't need to. Okay, I'm neurotic. I like to know this stuff for my life, but you don't need to in order to still experience your signature and live out your type, is what we're
Yeah.
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
have enough things in my life that I'm neurotic about, like that. The systems, the things I learned, the things I know that I don't have time. Or
Yeah.
the
Can't know
energy
it
for
all.
another one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to choose what
And
you focus on.
and
Yes.
success for him too is not monetary. Like even though
Mm-mm.
he's defined ego, like I find myself making sure he remembers his worth, his value. I'm the one that when he um is changing jobs or somebody offers him a job, I'm like, know your worth, all of this. And he just looks for the feeling of how it would feel there. And actually, sw- uh, when he didn't switch jobs, his company was sold, and it was kind of put in the locally. It's a pretty big company that he works for locally, and it was on the news and in the newspaper and on the everywhere that this company was purchased. And oftentimes when corporate companies are purchased, there's a lot of layoffs, or a lot of people are let go because of a merger. And Andy that day had 3 or 4 people, it's like within 15 minutes of this news coming out, saying, yeah, we want you at XYZ company, or if you leave, or if they let you go, we want you here.
Mm-hmm.
Like the invitations were just rolling in, like, oh, we want you.
Mm-hmm.
And not because he works like a generator, but because he's mastered the system. It was like this instant like tons of recognition. I thought that was very interesting with him being a projector and it coming through the network in a fourth line, right? It was all
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
he knew that were just like, hey,
Yeah.
we
It's
got
people
this
that
over
I'd worked
here.
with before
Hmm.
that knew me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
That was pretty cool.
actually the company that he works for now instantly recognized him, like met with him a couple times. He's met with the CEO and all of that. And they were like, hey, here's this in exchange for you stay here, to make sure he doesn't go anywhere, because they
Mm-hmm.
see the value that he brings to the company. They see his leadership skills. They see how, I don't know, I can't tell you what he does because I don't understand it. Probably just like he doesn't understand human design.
Absolutely.
It's so foreign to me. But he's really truly mastered that system. And they're like, oh, buddy, we don't want you going anywhere. So that's been pretty fantastic to watch. And he's so humble about it. He doesn't care. I'm the one that's like, make sure they pay you enough and make sure.
I
And
just
he's
want
like,
them to let me do what I like doing, so
Something that I've noticed about the channel of community, which is your channel, because my husband also has it, and so do both my parents, is that a lot of times you'll do something maybe just for the respect
Mhm.
instead of it's like money isn't the first thing you think of if somebody asks you to do something. It's kind of like you'll do it just for respect. And then if you don't get the respect, that's when you get bitter. It's not even so much whether or not people pay you. It's like my example of this is Thomas one time he volunteered. He didn't get asked. He volunteered to go sand all these tables at the restaurant I work at after the owner accidentally stripped them. And he was pissed that he didn't get a thank you. He didn't care that he didn't even clock in. He could have clocked in. He didn't. He was pissed he didn't even get a thank you. It's like he didn't even care that they didn't offer to pay him or whatever. And I feel like if he would have gotten a thank you, he would have been like, "Oh, that was worth it." Or the
Oh,
respect
I
for doing it,
totally
you know.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that 100%. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, we had a lot of questions about your channel.
My channel.
Yeah, your one channel.
Your one channel.
It's so cute.
That
Yeah,
one little
just
guy.
like, would love to hear his take on that channel. So we can tell you what that channel means if you don't remember from the readings that you've had and maybe what your take on that is. I mean, what I said is obviously part of it, but it's, it's an ego to emotional channel. So it has a ratchet wave, which means that the wave slowly builds and then it almost feels like it's a pressure cooker that just
Mhm.
goes off at some point. Do you experience that with your emotional wave?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like I don't know, like it's a lot of little things that build up and you can kind of and then I get to a point where I feel like everything is making me or like upset or like whatever. It, once it gets to that top level, it's like just everything sucks. I hate everything, you know. I don't know, but it takes a long time. Like it's I don't know, I feel like it goes in like 6-month cycles or 8-month
Mm.
cycles or something
Mhm.
like
Wow. Have you
yeah.
noticed that, Brandy, too, for him?
Yes. Yes. Haven't you noticed when I call you? It's about every 6 months, and I'm like, what the fuck?
Okay, can relate. I'm like, I guess I don't notice it with Thomas, but it probably really is like not
Yeah.
that often.
Yeah. It isn't. And it's, I mean, with that being his only channel, Thomas also has 659. He has some other
True.
stuff going on. He's also at 3420. He's doing his thing. He's got other things to keep him, you know, other definition that's kind of doing its thing and that can be felt. Andy just has that. And I can see it building. And I think a lot of it too is, Teresa and I are very passionate about somatics in the body and emotional expression and, working on all the different parts of ourselves. And I mean, Andy, you had a rough childhood. And so that can lead to not feeling safe with emotional expression. And so it can maybe kind of build a little bit longer,
I suppose that, yeah, I can
you
see
know?
that. You know, it's something that I've been working on and
Yeah.
being more aware of and becoming like more able to express, you know. But yeah, I think you're right. It's that slow building of I don't know, tension, anger, frustration, like all the things that I feel are difficult for me to express because of the way that I saw them expressed growing up. It was very explosive, you know. It wasn't done in a healthy way at all, right? So
Hmm.
I'm learning to do it in a more healthy way myself, but very, very slowly.
Yeah. And I mean, I can vouch for that channel and physical touch kind of making things better. Just like, and I'm not talking like sexual touch. I'm just talking about physical touch. If he's touch deprived, it's way worse.
Yeah.
Like way worse.
Do you find that when you're in that emotional space where everything sucks, it's harder to communicate about that feeling? Like it's hard to put that feeling into words.
Yeah, and I think to some extent, it's harder for me because I'm afraid that I'll blow up, like what was expressed when I was a child. I don't, because I feel like it's that pressure cooker, like it's ready to go, and I don't want that to be how I express. Right. So it makes it even more difficult, more confusing, I guess.
Because you don't want to just fly off the handle and you're kind of
Yeah.
suppressing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And at that point, the pressure is built so high and you're suppressing it so hard that it's kind of this weird, like if I say something, it's going to be so.
And it's a low, then it gets really low, really low. And one of the ways that you may have coped with that in the past, which you've been sober for several years now, was alcohol.
Yeah. That was the main way I coped with that in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so it's like a whole new world not having alcohol as a coping mechanism. And then, oh gosh, I got to deal with all of this.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you handle that stuff when you don't have something to numb it anymore? Right.
Yeah.
So you have to learn better ways to express yourself, different ways to express yourself. And so I find for me, communication is obviously key. Right? That's key in a relationship. But for me, outside of relationship, I find that I have to move. I have to be outside. I have to do something with my body to get my mind out of that space. And for me, being alone, being outside, getting into the woods, going fishing, something like that is where like my space is, right? Where I can sit and I can actually process those things. Because if I'm around other people, I can't. I don't know. It's something to do with my chart or whatever, but it's just not possible for me to process those times or at those times when.
So a keynote for Gate 40 is aloneness. And then you're also a second line to boot, which is the hermit. So I feel like that makes a lot of sense. And I do notice that with Thomas too, where if he's in it, if he's really in his feels, he can't talk to me about it. He just needs to go somewhere or go be by himself somewhere. And then as soon as he's processed it a little bit, then he can share a bit. But he almost has to be in a place of clarity before he can share.
Right. Yeah, which is also tough because you're never, I don't know, maybe not for him, but it's something that I have to deal with is that, and I've talked to some of the people I've done readings with, is that I will never be 100% certain of anything. Right. So even when I'm processing those things, I'm still questioning, right? Is that, is that really real? Is that really true? I know I feel it, but is that really true? And then I have to go through and process that. If it's not true, what am I doing? Right. And then I got to calm myself down and then figure out how to communicate that. If it is true, then I got to figure that out and communicate that. But it's getting to that point where I understand myself, whether it's true or not.
And I think we can probably thank your conscious sun being gate 64, the gate of confusion, for some of that.
He has that 4 times in his chart. Yeah. He has gate 64 4 times.
Like, not only is your 3740 emotional channel fully conscious, your conscious sun gate is a head gate. And what that means is just you're a very mental person. You're because when I think about clarity, I think about my body. I'm not thinking about if my mind has figured something out. I'm thinking about, has the nervousness passed? Has my wave settled in my body? Do I feel more chill, or I don't want to use the word neutral, but do I just feel like the wave has mellowed out in my body? But my wave is fully unconscious. So I don't really have that feeling. I mean, of course I can get mental about it and I can toss and turn and whatever in my mind, but there's such a physical, visceral feeling to my wave. It's really interesting hearing about yours and hearing just how mental it is for you.
Oh, completely mental. Yeah. Yeah. My mind is going 100% of the time anyway. And then when I'm in those moments, it's just that much faster and it's not helpful, right? It just doesn't feel helpful at all.
Yeah. Would you have, like, even before design or even now, I don't know, would you have classified yourself as somebody with anxiety?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Run the whole gamut of, having seen a therapist and done all the medications and all that stuff, over the past 20 years, but
Did
haven't
any of
done them in
that
a very
help?
long time. No.
See,
Uh,
so sometimes it really is just your design. I
I
don't mean
know,
to be
I
the
know.
bearer of bad news, but I'm trying to normalize this as like there might not be anything quote unquote wrong with you
Mhm.
if it's something that you kind of learn to manage and live with, and if you know what's going on, maybe what's
yeah.
firing when it's happening.
Yeah. The only thing I really remember those things doing for me is I remember getting nightmares and it got easier to get drunk. Right. I
Mhm,
was like,
mhm.
that's like, okay, this is not benefiting me in any way. So,
Yeah, you're super mental. I remember when when you came to the first high desert human design conference, the first time you came with us, and James pulled up your chart and was like, "This is a 1 in a 2 million, 5 million, 10 million chart because your magic square, I think all but one, is resonant or with your motivation, which is guilt."
yeah.
So like 5 all over the place. Super
Continuities
mental. Yeah, there. That's what it is.
What was it?
Um,
called genetic continuities,
Genetic continuity.
where
Oh, okay.
and I think James has the same thing in his chart, I want to say, or something
Something
similar.
similar, yeah.
So he was like, I want to talk to him because I just want to know what his experience is like.
Yeah. And he was like,
Yeah.
these people are you're super mental, aren't you?
Which, again, this is like a below the surface thing. So for my
Mm.
human design nerds out there, if you just look at Andy's chart, you could think, oh, well, he's got completely open ajna, an
Mhm.
undefined head. So he probably doesn't have that busy of a mind. Or, if you're just looking at that, you're not going to think he's so mental. But then when you look at his chart below the surface,
Mhm.
very mental.
Very.
Yeah.
And
I
he
feel like,
only Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I feel like everything, like my environment, my emotions, like everything is processed through here first. Like it
Mhm.
just has to go that way for me.
So
And he
interesting.
only has like 14 gates defined or something like that in his chart. He has several gates multiple times.
Oh, yeah.
40, gate 40, he has like 3 times. 37, it's like 3 or 4 times. 64 is like 4 times. 63 is a couple times. Like,
Mhm.
it's just like you're just a very specific person.
Very
Very
set. Yeah.
concentrated to certain themes. The universe is like, you need to learn about these specific things over and over and over again in your lifetime.
Yep. Maybe I'm done with all the other shit. This is just, this is it. Yeah.
um,
Oh,
I
yep,
had a
go for it.
question.
Yeah, do it.
Always, I have questions always.
Yeah.
Uh, I was gonna say, so because you said that therapy and all of those things and medication didn't really work for you, can we pivot to what has worked for you? Maybe talking about psychedelics a little bit.
Let's talk
No,
about
yeah.
psychedelics.
Yeah, we can do that.
Cross of consciousness.
Uh, let's see, where do we start?
Well, I know that mushrooms of all kinds are a medicine that enjoy working with you. I feel like they chose you, really, is how it feels.
Yeah.
They
They
made
did.
you their bitch.
Yeah, they did.
They're like, you're going to grow us and be our
Yeah.
minion.
Mushrooms and mycelium are a system that Andy has mastered.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always liked to grow things and garden things and, like plant plants and harvest food and all that kind of stuff. And
Side note,
when,
one of his here's a second line thing and a projector thing. Like a hobby is he's like, I'm gonna get my permaculture design certification. It's like that's something that people make a career out of. And he's like, I'm just gonna study this and get this certification.
it seemed like the thing to do at the time, I get, when I get interested in something, I get very interested in it and very focused on it until I feel like it's usually that's, I don't know, I feel like it feels like it's, I don't know, 3 to 5 years for something. I'll go all in, I'll study it, I'll learn everything I can possibly can about it, read 100 books on it, and then I'll be like, okay, I know that now. And then I go out and do the thing. And then now I just do it as a hobby. It's not like I don't do it professionally, but I do it, it's like,
Just for fun.
yeah,
For
yeah.
fun.
Well, I think I've kind of integrated it more into my life than I have as even as a hobby or something that I do. Like every place that we've lived, I've planted trees, I've planted plants, I've got perennial vegetables, I've got all these things going on, and it's just part of my life. It's part of what I do or who I am. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, now let's talk about how psychedelics
Yeah.
helped
Psychedelics.
you.
What different psychedelics have you tried? Which one was maybe more helpful than others, if that's a
Yeah,
thing? Andy is across a consciousness, remember? So part of his life trajectory, life path is to learn about the nature of consciousness. And if you've ever done psychedelics, you know how much they help you learn about your own consciousness and maybe even others' consciousness.
Mhm.
right. So the first one I ever tried was I did LSD back in high school. I was 18, 19 years old or just out of high school. And it was more just kind of messing around, right? We didn't have a clue what we were doing. So I did that a couple times. I didn't really care for it much. It felt very chemically. I had some bad experiences more because the environment than anything else. Um, like never take LSD and go to a local carnival, right? Not a good plan. The lights and carnies, and it's just terrifying. I don't
Did
recommend stuff
did you do
at
that?
all. Right? Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I
Don't.
did do that.
I did do
Yeah.
that.
You ever heard of a ride called the Zipper?
Yeah,
Like it goes around and you're in the spinny thing. Yeah, that's not a good plan. So, yeah,
not learning about consciousness there.
not at all. No, but learning about what not to do, obviously,
That was
Carney's.
a gate 35 been there, done that moment. Did it just for the experience.
Right.
Realized it wasn't that great.
Yeah, sounded good at the time, right? So, yeah, so messed around a little bit in high school. And then I went for a long period of time where I didn't touch anything like that. I don't know. Just didn't call to me. And I think that alcohol really suppressed it for a very long time. I was so into that world because like everything I do, I studied it. I brewed beer, I made all the things, right? Went all in. And then that kind of part of my life started winding down, it came back into my awareness. Um, and then initially just doing mushrooms and kind of hanging out, seeing what happens, and then really starting to get into that and read about it and learn about the studies and learn about the proper ways to do things. Um, Reading Terrence McKenna and James Fadiman and all of the people, right? Listening to all the interviews with Robin Carhart Harris and the people that are doing these studies at, like the Imperial College and different colleges here in the US that are now studying those types of things. Um, and so I started picking up like some of their playlists. I started doing it with the headphones and the eye mask and making it more of like a more of an internal experience than an external experience. So it started definitely with the mushrooms and kind of getting me onto that path. About 2018, I was in one of those lows, one of those waves, right? Wasn't really sure what was going to happen, what I wanted to do
Low,
anymore.
low, a low,
Real
low.
low. Yeah. Wasn't sure if
Like,
I wanted to, exist anymore. Right?
Oh.
Um, and so Brandy and I had seen some documentaries, that kind of stuff on, some of the different psychedelics, and ayahuasca was something that kind of really called to me. I actually had a dream and was kind of told that I was supposed to go. And for context, I'm not somebody who dreams, right? I don't remember dreams. It's like, maybe once a year I'll wake up and be like, wow, had a dream this night. And I had this dream that this plant was talking to me. And so made the arrangements. I flew to Costa Rica. I worked with a really good team that has, board their board of this place. Their studies are like therapists and people that have studied this thing and have put together like a really good plan, and they have a whole outline and integration and all of these things there on site. You eat 100% vegetarian and clean foods and no salts and no sugars, and I mean, like, they really kind of go all out. And I spent a week there, and I did 4 ayahuasca sessions over 5 nights. You do a Monday, Tuesday, take Wednesday off, do it Thursday, Friday. And the first night I was very disappointed. Like, I was angry. I didn't feel anything, right? And I sat there in the middle of the Costa Rican jungle in this maloca all night long, expecting like this big transformational experience, and I didn't feel anything. I was just felt like I was stone sober, right? And so the next day I started talking to some of the counselors, and I talked to some of the other people that were there, and they just kept kind of encouraging me, try it again. Um, if you need to, you can have more, right? You'll give you a second cup. And so I go in the second night, and I sit down and I have my drink, which tastes terrible, by the way. Don't recommend. And within, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes, I just started really like sinking into it. I could start seeing these visuals, and the oh, I don't even remember what the shamans are called now. For some reason, it's not coming to me. But they sing to the plants. They came up from Peru, and in the Peruvian tradition, they go out into the jungle, and they feast, or they dine only on individual plants until they learn that song. And the two shamans that I worked with had both come from separate tribes, separate parts of Peru, and they had both ended up getting their songs from basil, of all things. And sitting in, like, laying in that room, it's pitch dark. There's a couple of candles going, and they're singing these songs, and they both have their own songs that they were taught in different regions of Peru, but taught by the same plant. And all the words are different and everything, but the melodies are identical, and it just starts kind of sinking in, and it's like they're singing to the plant that's in your body, and you can feel it start moving, and you can feel it to start working, and it starts, talking to you. It starts showing you things. And it started to show me really my past, right? I started getting these little images, like almost like photos popping up in my view. And then they started shooting back, and they grew into this like huge tree, like just a big, strong oak tree kind of thing. Right? And what I kind of learned and gathered from that experience, is like, these things aren't the things that like broke me down, or like that are there to crush me. These are the things that were there to teach me, to like build me into to what I was. The things that had got me to there as it was right then and there. I wouldn't have been there without stuff. I wouldn't be here without stuff. So kind of my experiences with the psychedelics is that they very much have worked with me instead of like against me, as long as you're open to it, as long as you're able to allow that, and not, get too much in your head about it, and worry about it too much. You have to be very, very open, and you have to be very accepting, in order to really like learn that lesson, to be able to take those things and get through it without, all the fear and anger and psychosis and stuff that can come along with it. They're not easy medicines, right? And they can be very dangerous for some people, but you have to be in the right mindset, or they will mess with you. So that was my first like major breakthrough, I guess. And since then, I have done mushrooms a couple more times, and then I had an experience with 5-MeO DMT, which is the toad, licking the toad, whatever people joke about, right? It's the venom of the Sonoran desert toad, like Bufo alphareris, right? And so they like milk these toads, and they scrape the poison off their skin, and then they let it dry, and then you smoke that. And what happens is, in the ceremony, and then it's probably not the same all over the place, but traditionally, you'll be standing. You'll recite some sort of saying, some sort of poem, some sort of intention, and you'll take 3 deep breaths. And on the third breath, they put the little pipe in and they light it, and you take the biggest inhale you've ever taken, kind of thing, as much as possible. And I took that third breath and I inhaled for what felt like an eternity, right? And then you're gone. You are rocketed off to some other dimension. Your body collapses. They catch you and lay you on the ground. And during that experience, I had an experience of being able to play with the universe, like being able to kind of like fast forward and rewind and try to make the outcomes to come out different, you know. And in the end, it always ended up being that no matter what I did, no matter how I tried to change everything, like by, you know, imparting will on it, by trying to force it, it always ended the same way, right? So during that experience, you know, it was like a timeline of the universe, and it ended in an explosion, right? Every time. And so I sat there and or laid there or dreamed it or experienced it. I don't really know, right? But I did that and I played with it and forward and back and forward and back. And it finally got to the point where it was just really funny to me. You know, I got the understanding that there isn't any forcing it. There isn't any way to will yourself into all knowingness or all being or any of these things. You just have to experience it, and you have to learn to enjoy it while you're there. So that was pretty intense. I feel like it took me a good 2 weeks after that experience to really realize what reality was again. You know, it's one of those things that can completely and utterly take you out of your own world if you're not careful. But in my integration after that, and talking to the person that had administered it and held the ceremony and everything, he sat me down and he's like, I've never seen anybody in my life be as calm as you were when you did that. Because they catch you, they lay you on the ground. And he said, I just laid there with my arms crossed, and I didn't move. A lot of people, and then I can kind of attest to this, the person that went after me basically went into convulsions and was throwing up all over the floor. And it was, you know, kind of terrifying because I had just done it. I'm still sitting there like in a daze, and I'm watching this person, this man that I love. He's a good friend of mine, just convulsing and throwing up, and like, you know, all of these things that it just at the moment were terrifying. And after the fact, you know, I learned that that's typical. That's usually what happens. But for me, it was one of the most calming, rewarding experiences of my life. And then since then, I've laid off quite a bit, you know. But what I've learned is that if I time those experiences, then it kind of overrides my wave to some extent. It allows me to deal with those things more evenly. I don't ratchet quite so hard. I don't get anywhere near as low. But it also has allowed me to be more expressive, you know, and understand what's a healthy way to kind of express, you know, versus what I had seen.
Also, in your experience of all of this, you've been a typical projector with it because you started studying psychedelics. You started studying the altered states of consciousness and peak experiences, and you took courses, and you went, was it Jamie Wheel?
I went and worked with Stephen Kotler.
Ah.
Yeah. Him and Jamie Wheel had this thing called the Flow Genome Project, in which they scientifically study peak experiences. And they've worked out kind of what they call hedonic calendaring, where you can schedule these things into your life, such as, you know, not necessarily just psychedelics, but that is one of the things they include. They also include other things that are peak experiences, you know, climbing a mountain, jumping out of an airplane, surfing is a big one for them. these things that get you into a flow state are considered a peak experience, right? And how the effects that those things can have on your life, your nervous system, your physical health, right? Stephen Kotler, oh, excuse me, had Lyme disease and was laying in his apartment getting ready to kill himself when somebody invited him to go surfing. And instead of killing himself, like literally laying there with the gun in his hand, ended up going surfing with a friend and fell in love with it, got into that flow state and started doing it, and repeatedly over and over and over again. After doing that, actually managed to heal himself from Lyme disease. It's pretty crazy what having these different types of experiences and getting your body and your mind in the right, I don't know, frequency or right state of mind can do, the healing that can be behind that. And I think as far as like this conversation goes, having that understanding of your design and living your strategy and authority are very similar to that, right? They can kind of get you in that the right frequency for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the disclaimers too, because I feel like a lot of people just think they can go do ayahuasca in like Joe Schmo's backyard and be like,
Yeah.
oh, cool. And you talked so much about how important it was to have the shamans and have the ceremony and have that kind of guidance and the preparation that you did. And there's a lot that goes into it. So disclaimer, this is not medical advice. This is not
Yeah.
psychological advice.
No.
Just sharing experience and,
Yeah.
everybody's going to have a unique experience of it.
Yeah. The Shipibo people and the way that they hold these ceremonies and the reason that they do them the way they do, and the reason that they're there with you is because they believe that it wards off the demons, right? It's so that they can't come and steal your soul when you're in that experience or when you're in that state, because, like these things can cause very severe issues with people, up to and including death, but that's very, very incredibly rare to be caused, from the medicine itself. It's typically caused by people that aren't listening. They're doing other things also, haven't stopped taking their meds of whatever that can contraindicate with these things. So it is very important to be careful.
And you went to Solterra.
I did, yes.
Down in Costa Rica.
Yes.
And Terrence McKenna's brother is on the board, or is he one of the owners too?
He's one of the board members. Dennis McKenna is one of the board members. Yes, he's a psychologist, psychotherapist, something. He's very, very well certified and has been studying psychedelics. I mean, him and Terrence McKenna, his brother, are the ones that basically invented the method to grow mushrooms indoors, right? The psychedelic mushrooms.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I noticed about you, Andy, with how mental you are and with your emotionality, that you have a good gate, like radar with checking in with yourself. And when you feel like it's very different than what I see with generators, because we're like, we want to go learn about us and figure out who we are. And what I see with you, what I witness is that when you're kind of feeling off, it's like you need to go check in with consciousness. Like you need to go check in with, because what was it, a couple months ago, you had a peak experience with mushrooms, and because you just needed to go check in with yourself, but it's not the way that we all think of, like therapy doesn't work for you,
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I agree that, I think I need to check in with myself because it's very difficult for me to do otherwise. I don't know if that makes sense, but like in a normal daily life, I always kind of hear this, right? You need to sit down and kind of check in and feel in your body, and right. And I don't experience that, right? I feel like I have to check in through others, if that makes sense. unless I go do something like that, right? Or if I'm alone, or if I'm rock climbing or jumping out of a plane, right? Those are the moments that I can feel me like
Mm-hmm.
internally and check in with myself.
Mm-hmm. And a thing that you have every week that you kind of started because it's what you needed was you host a men's group every week.
I do.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
I do. Sure. Yeah. How long have I been doing that now? 6 years, 7 years? Started when we were in two houses ago.
I think it was 4, 5. No, I don't know, 5 years?
Five or
Yeah.
six. It was
Yeah.
before inner
Yeah.
space existed.
Yeah.
So why did I do that? I did that because of my, I guess, again, going back to my childhood and my experience in life.
Well, and you can
Um,
see yourself through the other.
and yeah, right. Right. Yeah. That actually makes a lot more sense. Um,
And your one channel is the channel of community.
yeah. Right.
Tribe, tribal.
Yeah, I mean, I started it because I didn't feel like I had a tribe, right? I guess I had quit drinking, I'd quit doing a lot of the things in my life. I quit having, like hanging out with those types of my buddies, right? They were drinking buddies. That's what we did. We went to the bars or we brewed beer or we whatever, right? And when I kind of got out of that world, I kind of left the people with it, right? It was hard to stay with the people and not have the rest of the experience. Um, so probably, I don't know, a year or so, year or two after I guess I quit drinking, I was feeling rather lonely. I didn't really have a tribe and I didn't know where to find one. And so I had one buddy that him and I had met through, actually, I think met through Brandy. And so him and I were talking once, I don't know, and it was something that he kind of had always dreamed of doing, was like starting a men's group and having the conversations and being able to actually, get to know people more than on that surface level. And so we started doing that. We started hosting it at either my house or another friend's house. Then it eventually became hanging out at my neighbor's house because he had joined the group, and got to the point where we were having 10 guys a week show up and just hanging out and talking and getting to know each other and building that community. And then probably 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago now, when we opened Inner Space, moved it into there and just kind of started, throwing it in the app, throwing it in the schedule. And we're going to have a free community circle on Monday nights, and it just kind of grown from that. I've had, I don't even know, over that 4 year period, several hundred different guys show up. And then it kind of flows in and out. Different guys show up for different reasons. But there's always like a core group that shows up pretty much every week now. And I don't know, I guess it drives me because I get that community. I also get the opportunity to guide. I get the opportunity to listen. I get to ask questions, like, um, you know, I don't know if everybody experiences this, but when you ask someone a question and it changes their like whole perspective on life, you can see it in their face when they're like, oh shit, what the hell just happened? Right. And so I get to experience that, not necessarily every week, but it happens more often than not. Um, so I don't know. It's just my way of building community, I guess. And I guess I got to build it the way I wanted that way. I don't know.
Yeah, and it seems like with people who recognize you, especially probably the people who come regularly or have been coming for a long time, they recognize you for your guidance or for your leadership or what you bring to the table, the questions that you ask, which by the way is also a projector thing to
Yeah.
ask questions and like how it can change somebody's entire perspective just with one question.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, I mean, for me, that's like probably the biggest reason I do that. I've also, stemming from that, I've started, I've taken coaching classes and working through a place out of Florida called Coach for Life, and ICF, the International Coaching Foundation, and getting certified and all those things too, right? Because I figured, I'm already kind of doing it. might as well go ahead and get the certification. And I also, right, helps me. And I also figured that at worst, it helps me in the leadership position that I'm in at work, right? Now I have that opportunity to be a better listener to the people that work for me, to be ask better questions, to listen to help better, right? To understand more.
Do you feel like
It-
that
it-
coaching certification helped you ask better questions? Like, did you have to learn to ask questions, or was it something you've kind of always been good at?
um, I think it helped me understand how important a good question can be more than anything, right? It allowed me to maybe reframe the questions a little bit, maybe ask clearer questions. That's definitely very important, right? Um, but yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, right? Just the clarity, um, the importance and the weight of a good question. It was like something that you kind of really they really pound into you, right? And then sitting in those classes and they're doing not really say mock coaching sessions because you're actually coaching someone, but it is typically someone that's already a coach, and when you ask a question and they start crying and you're like, that's fucking incredible, right?
Had that happen a couple times.
Yeah.
He would be like, I don't know. I just asked a question and
That penetrating aura.
yeah,
Right.
we've witnessed that. We witnessed that. We have that, oh shit moment where we were in the kitchen and Thomas is trying to figure out if he was going to take a job or not. And me and Teresa are like, blah, 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 and like talking to Thomas, and Andy's just watching us. And then he just asks one question. And I think the question was like, could you go to work every day? Do you want to go to work every day in a place that's not your vibe? And it was, but the way you delivered it, and like you were just looking right at him, and we all just stopped, and like the conversation stopped, and Thomas knew his answer, and it
It was
was
like
just
time
like
stopped.
time stopped.
Like in a movie, where everything stops around you and you're all just standing there. That's what the energy felt like.
Yeah,
It was wild. That
it
was
was wild
such a
to
crazy
watch.
experience.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty
I
cool.
understood the power of a projector question in that moment.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
don't think it would, if Brandy and I would have asked that question, I
Uh-uh.
don't think it would have had the
Uh-uh.
same
Uh-uh.
penetrative quality to it.
No.
It
Mm-mm.
penetrated him.
And it was like you were just observing us, just like dip, 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 dip. And then just all of a sudden you knew exactly the question to ask. As we're like dancing around being 3 MGs, just
Is that how you would describe our energy, Andy?
yeah. We were just
Pretty
like
much.
You can tell who's the non-sacral just by watching this and seeing how much Brandy and I move.
it was like Andy's aura
Uh.
just like parted the Red Sea and just shot into Thomas and like asked a question, and it changed
And
like
if anything, it also just affirmed what Thomas already knew.
absolutely.
It's not
Oh,
like
yeah.
you
he
were
was
trying to convince him of anything. I think
no.
you just brought his focus to what he already knew, to what his authority was saying. You could feel, I'm guessing, whether you realized it or not, you could feel where he wanted to go and where he didn't. You could feel where his energy wanted to flow.
Mhm. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I notice when I'm in like a coaching session or when I'm in like my men's group and stuff is most people have a pretty good understanding of where they want to go, but they don't know the question that gets them there, right? Like they don't understand the one thing that's going to make them make the decision official.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Can you describe what that feels like when, especially when you're sitting in aura with a sacral being and you ask them a question and they have a sacral response, they're a yes to it. What does that feel like in your body when there's a response?
Oh, that's a great question. I guess I'll go back to the kind of the same example that you guys gave when we were sitting in that room, right? you guys were all talking, and Thomas is kind of explaining his side of the thing, and he went and he did the whatever the word is where you try out at a restaurant. You guys know,
Dodge.
a stage, right? And he was talking about kind of, how it felt and how it he felt like it could be, and the opportunity that it could be, and the pay that it could be. And he's like, and you could just, I felt him like kind of hemming and hawing about it, because he's like, I would have to dress up every day. I would have to do this. He's like, and I could do it. I could push through that. Right. And I could, in myself, I can just feel that building up, and I can feel the question like forming, and it's in my mind. Right. And then it just kind of comes out. Right. And when I look at him and I'm like, hey, do you really want to go to work every day at a place that isn't your vibe? And you can feel the energy just kind of drop. Like, I
Mm.
don't know, like there was all this like excitement and this energy and this build up around it. And then all of a sudden it's just like gone.
Wow. So that's like what a no might feel like.
Yeah, maybe.
Like a sacred, like the
Yeah.
energy is not going in that direction. Because you asked him a yes or no question,
Yeah.
and the answer was
Yeah.
no.
And it sounds like what you were kind of feeling was his willpower, not his, like you were being able to differentiate you're like, well, your willpower is talking right now,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could,
not your sacral, like excitement or response. You're not
right.
actually having a response to that place. Your willpower is telling you how you can push through.
Yeah, it's like I could see him doing it, I could see him getting up every day and putting on the suit and trudging into that place, and just not being happy about it.
Yeah, and your inner vision as well. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also want to throw that out there that you were visualizing him. So
Yeah.
it's cool to hear that, because that's your cognition working with your projectorness.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you can visualize it, but you could, what it sounds like is you were visualizing him doing it, and you could also maybe visualize or feel how he was feeling while doing it in your inner vision land.
Yeah, that's exactly how I would explain it, right? Is I could see it, and I could see him pushing through it, and I could see that it was like one of those things that where you go every day and you feel like it's killing you, right? Like you're just not happy about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's curious to me too that you don't know that Thomas is feeling cognition. And so in your question kind of reflects a place that's not your vibe for feeling cognition, like feeling in touch where frequency is very important.
Vibes are
You just
everything.
you just knew the exact question to ask.
Vibes
Mm.
are everything
Vibes
for
are
us.
everything. So for you to be like, is that your vibe? Could you imagine going to a place that's not your vibe? It's
Every day.
It might not
Yeah.
seem like a potent question, but your question to him was so calculated, unconsciously calculated perfectly, calibrated for him, you know? Someone listening might be like, that's not a potent question, but the way that it came about and how perfect it was, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And
why
I would also argue that people would say that it's not a potent question, but until you've been in that situation and you're trying to make a life-changing decision and somebody really kind of points it out to you, nothing's a potent question until you've really experienced it.
yeah,
And I feel like projectors sometimes must feel like they're pointing out the obvious. But when somebody is like all up in their mind, it really is like we need the obvious asked to us, because the mind is
yes,
so, it just, it traps you. And then you're just
right.
reeling and reeling. And you could see him doing that in his mind, just up in that space. And you like, it's almost like you brought him into reality, into his
Mhm.
reality with that
Mhm.
question.
You're so good at not advising people and advising people,
Mhm.
you
Projector
know?
guidance is not advice. Let's
It's
make
not
that
advice.
very
No.
Yeah.
clear.
And for all the
Anybody can give
projectors,
advice.
yeah, for all the projectors that are listening, the questions that you ask are like gold, you know? Questions are what we need from you to
Yeah.
guide that sacral energy. You're not going to guide like by telling him like you shouldn't work there wouldn't have worked. That
Yeah.
wouldn't have done that wouldn't have had that potency. That wouldn't have changed the direction, you know, guided his sacral energy. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess maybe it is because of I'm me and I'm a projector and whatever, but I would almost argue that advice is never good, right? Like my perspective of what you should do is maybe never right for you. You got to know and that's kind of the where I look at it is that somewhere deep inside you, you know the answer, right? And it's kind of my job to figure out how to pull it out of you.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yep.
don't need me to tell you, right? It's not my job to decide that for you.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good segue into one of the questions that somebody asked. Any guidance on being a projector with an MG partner?
Let's see. I mean, it's such a hard question. It's everybody's so different, right? Um, but I would guess I would say kind of the same thing with anybody being in a relationship, communicate well, listen more than you speak, you know, um, pay attention to what's going on around you, pay attention to how your partner reacts to what you do and what you say.
So through the lens of human design, the manifesting generator projector relationship, we're very different. You are very focused. You're very intentional.
Methodical.
I am methodical.
Yep.
And I am just not any of those. So how is it for you to be
Living
in
in chaos
relationship with me?
Oh man.
And being in relationship with somebody too, like taking into consideration my circuitry, right? I have an integration channel. How you've witnessed, I have no energy for random things or like things that you might think are very important.
A design
And
of
then
following her own convictions.
design of
That's what
following
her
my own
integration
conviction.
channel is.
And I will have no energy for life house things. And then I will want to go to the craft store. I'll have all the energy for that. So what is it like? Also with a boss 2145. No. We're
A
both
bossy
really
bitch.
the bossy my controlling ass. Yeah, what's it like?
Hmm. I would say practice a lot of patience. Right. So I guess it's kind of the same, right? Like as a projector, I guess I would say the biggest thing that I can do in those situations is kind of observe, right? At some point when you're running into something or breaking something or making a mess, at some point you will ask for the guidance. It always happens, right? And it's my job to be patient and wait for that to happen.
Hear
Yeah.
that, projectors? Be patient.
Be
We will
patient.
eventually ask once we get so frustrated with ourselves.
And
I can't do this anymore. Figure it out.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's multiple times a day, I would say, or at least a week, multiple times, even this, I can think of like a dozen times in the past week where we'll be doing something. And so we have MG efficiency and we have projector efficiency. They're two very different things.
Very
They're
different.
very different.
And
Very
there
different.
will be something that we're doing and I'm like MG efficiency and then he'll like make it better and it's like projector efficiency.
Well, let's talk about the difference between MG efficiency and projector efficiency. So,
Yeah.
through my
Let's
lens, MG efficiency can be chaotic because we are trying to find a shortcut and we're also doing like 10 things at the same time, which is
yeah.
often not very efficient. But sometimes we get really lucky, right? And then we find a fun shortcut and all is well that ends well. But projector efficiency, also, projectors are more concerned about use of energy than we are. We've got energy to burn, so
Oh
we don't
yeah.
give a shit if we're
Yeah.
doing and I've watched this in your household
Yeah.
where let's say Weston, who's also a generator, your guy's kid, he does something and he's using more energy than he would have to do it. And Andy's just like, oh, you could have just done this and it would have been less work or faster. And he's like, I don't care, because his generator's got energy to burn. And so I imagine sometimes you watch us and you're just like, God, you're wasting so much energy
Oh yeah.
spinning your wheels. You could make that so much more efficient and easier. But then I'm sure at some point you realize, well, that's not necessarily something they care about. Like, we're only going to care about it when we're frustrated because we're doing it
Yeah.
in a very inefficient way.
Yeah. And again, I guess I would say that it's not my place, or it's not the projector's place to push how I feel or how I would do something on anybody. Right. Again, it's comes to those situations where I see something, like you're saying, something that looks really inefficient to me. And all I have to do is typically ask a question, right? Would it be easier or better use of your time if you did it this way? Right.
Well, also in our household too, it's like, if you guys don't do that correctly, I'm gonna have to do it anyways.
Uh, right.
Because I'll be
Someone's gonna have to
measuring,
fix that
like,
later. Yeah.
I'll be measuring things. I measure with my hands. I just stick them out and I'm like, it's this much. And then I'm like, yep, it fits. And
I do
he's
that
like,
too. Too lazy to get a ruler out. I'm like,
and
no, this
I'm
is
like,
faster.
I'm like, it'll fit. It'll be fine. And he's like, I'm just gonna pull out the measuring tape and the T-square and just make sure so that we only have to do it once. And I'm like, it's okay if we have to do it again.
Oh,
And he's
I
like,
cannot
no.
stand doing something more than once. I no, can't do
Because you
it.
don't have the energy to burn.
Yeah.
No.
Like, that is
Yeah.
precious. That's a precious resource. I'm not going to waste it.
Yeah. I'll read a 300-page book on how to do it so I don't have to do it twice.
Yeah.
That's such a
Like,
good example of projector
like,
focus right there, and studying and mastering the system of something so that you can be efficient with it.
Yeah.
yeah.
Whereas we
And
kind of figure it out as we go.
like last night, and really, and honestly, he lives with somebody who's super controlling. I'm not controlling in the way that, I mean, like, controlling about our relationship. I'm controlling about everything else.
Everything else.
Everything else. Like, we're not in that type of relationship, checking each other's phones, that type of controlling shit. I'm talking about he I, I gave him the spice rack, because we just moved the cabinet to like make the spices fit. I was like, this is your job. And he got some boxes in the mail and he's like, the little sliders for the spice rack came. He's like, I measured them. They're going to fit perfect and all of this stuff. And I was like, fantastic. And I just sat on the couch and I was like, I'm also 6 line, so perfectionism. I'm like, oh, is it going to be good? And it's fine. It works. It's perfect. But there's always me and my odd perfectionism and my control that's just kind of hanging out. And
it's like,
my certainty that I have undefined ajna, by the way. Um, my certainty that I know the best way, and I just know the MG way. Okay.
Not necessarily the best, but
I don't know the best. I
your
don't know the
way,
best way,
your
but
convictions.
it's my
yeah,
way.
it is a way. Yeah.
It is a way.
It is a way.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Oh man. So
So the
yeah,
The key takeaway
patience.
shit.
Yeah.
Patience.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
in our household, he's the only non-sacral. So we have a 3/5 MG daughter, a 1/4 emotional generator son. So we've all got sacral definition. And one of the things that I would like to touch on, if you're a projector listening and you're a projector parent, is something that Andy and I have been talking a lot about lately, as far as our children. And if we have things that come up like conflicts between us about our children, uh, a lot of the things that I've noticed are because Andy's so good at waiting for the invitation for guidance, like so good at it. But I feel like our children need guided. And some of the times I'm like, oh, because you just sent them off to do the thing and they don't know what they're doing, you know? And well, he's like, they didn't ask. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
That's a fair assessment sometimes.
Yeah. They'll be back.
They didn't. They'll be back once
They
they're frustrated.
will ask
no,
eventually.
I know, but then it's just like the expectation. I think that 3740 carries a lot of expectation. And so just talking about like guiding your children, showing them how to do the thing instead of the expectation of how to do the thing. Like earlier tonight, Weston was shoveling, and I literally, we counted like 3 times in his 10 years of life we've ever asked him to shovel. And he's out there just shoveling like willy-nilly. And I looked at Andy and I was like, have you ever actually guided him on how to shovel? Like, does he even know how to shovel? Or are we just going to be angry at him that he's not doing it correctly? So Andy went out there and was like, we have to remember that they need guidance. It's not,
So
they're not always going to ask.
I'm curious how that felt to go give him guidance when he didn't ask. Do you felt like he was listening to you? Yeah. I thought so.
I know.
This is why you wait.
No.
It is
Yeah.
why he waits.
If you want to, if you want to see, freak out in anger, go out and tell him what to do. Yeah.
Yep.
But then the expectation that they should know how to do it is also there.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, I guess,
So
that's still, where kind of like the patience comes in, right?
Mhm.
People need to go try things and fail before they will ask. And that's just how we are, like individuals, people. I'm that way, right? If you haven't tried something and failed, you haven't learned anything.
Yeah.
Ain't that the truth?
Mm-hmm.
I had another good question. Ooh, I thought of it.
Oh.
So, Andy, in human design, you have an undefined G center, which means that your direction in life is inconsistent. And the analogy that a lot of us like to give with this is you're kind of waiting for a train to come and pick you up. And you're waiting to hop on somebody else's train, somebody else's ride, right? To give you a direction. And you don't have to figure out your direction in life. Life will just kind of show you that direction.
Mhm.
And what I've seen, and I'm sure this shows up in like lots of different areas in your life, but what I've seen in your relationship with Brandy, since she has the defined G center, she's often the one deciding what direction you guys are going to go in. And you're just kind of like, okay, I'm along for the ride. Do you want to talk at all about what that's been like for you?
Yeah, sure. I guess, sometimes it's really surprising, like the direction that it ends up going. But most of the time, if you like, I feel like most of the time, if I just, again, am patient and kind of trust the process, then the questions will come, right? And I'll have that opportunity to guide that direction from within. There's a lot of times where it's like a large sweeping change. Hey, I feel like we need to sell our house. Like, okay. Right? Like, give me a couple days on that one, and then from there, then we can kind of come together and come up with a plan and make a decision. And, like, I know the decision's already been made in her head, but it takes a few days for me, to kind of get my head around that. And then also, kind of form the questions, right? To decide for us if that's a good plan or not. Like, is that really what we should do? What about this thing and this thing and this thing? And is that really helping us get to this goal that we have or whatever? Right. So I do kind of initially kind of fall into that trap where I just kind of hop on the train blindly. But then when I kind of catch up with myself and have a little bit of a chance to think about it, then that kind of patience kicks in and the questions start popping up where I can start asking those things of her and we can come to answers like a conclusion together.
Mm. Yeah, and I can really hear your emotional authority too, where you have to take time to process her very quick sacral decision.
Yeah.
Of me following my G center that's defined by me following my own convictions.
Yeah.
Does it feel like sometimes, and I don't mean for this to sound wrong or fucked up or whatever, but does it feel like sometimes she's doing something for herself that just ends up to so happen work out for everybody else? Like almost
Yeah.
like it's coming from a selfish place a little bit.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah. I mean, you know, from like an outside perspective, right? She's so quick to jump into something and so quick to make a decision that it almost never feels like it's for somebody else, right? Even though, like, I'm sure in her head and her heart it is, you know,
Mhm.
but from the outside, you're like, what the hell just happened? Right? Like, nobody else was involved in this. Like, it just happened somehow, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, she's so tribal, I feel like it all has to end up helping other people at some point, but just the initial decision is very self-driven, I feel like.
Yeah, because I wanted to move. I'm like, I'm tired of that we have to clean this house. I want a smaller house.
Yeah, which in
Yeah.
turn helped Andy because
Yeah.
and to be fair, that was something you had said to me at some point, Andy. I think it was when you were going through your an Uranus opposition, which we'll get into as well, health issues.
Yeah.
And you were like, I don't want this big ass fucking house. I want to live in a trailer. Like, you were like, if it was up to me, we'd live in a trailer right now.
It was probably like a cabin or something when I said it, but yeah.
Tomato,
Yeah.
tomato.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
But I
Mhm.
think what you meant is just something smaller and less work to maintain, less
Yeah.
expensive, all of those things, which
Mhm.
makes sense also as a projector because you're like, I don't want to have to work so hard just at life to keep up here.
Well,
Yeah.
and props to Andy too when I had all of my excitement about moving and when we came and looked at the place and I was like, there, we're moving there right now. I know that he's emotional, so he had to be on board. And, you know, while he was kind of riding his wave about it, he'd propose questions, be like, well, here's, you know, how do we think this is going to be if we're working on a relationship, you know, during this time? And how's this going to be? And, you know, just really like free to express what was going on with him, not even just like it's going to save us shitloads of money. He wasn't thinking about that. It was almost like for him, these other things are very much more important than any amount of money. You know,
Mhm.
I'd rather keep paying for the mortgage if we can work on these other things, very, very tribal themed things. Yeah. Yep.
Mhm.
Very interesting.
It's the Brandy show, and he's just on the ride.
Yeah, and I mean, as it goes, if you're an
I
undefined G and you don't like the train you're on, you just hop off. But
I have had a couple exes tell me that, like post breakup, be like, it's just whatever Brandy wants to do. And I'm like, I can't help it. I don't know. So when I learned about the,
2145.
yeah, when I learned about my design, I was like, oh, I don't have to not be that. I can just be that. It is. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
one of the questions that was asked is, what was your experience of hearing that you were a projector and learning what a projector is?
Hmm.
Was it validating? Was it shocking? How was that for you?
Um, I guess I'm still kind of learning what it is, right? So there's a little bit of that. But you know, kind of the little bit that I've done, the readings that I've had, I think it feels very validating, right? At first I didn't understand what any of that meant, right? So it was a little bit confusing until I kind of got into it a little more, read a little bit, had a couple of readings. But yeah, overall I would say it's been very validating. Um, and I think I'm kind of, I don't know, maybe fortunate in that a lot of the things that it describes are things that I've just kind of felt and done naturally. But not always, right? I've definitely experienced the bitterness and all the things also, right?
And
And
the
that is,
overdoing and the over and just
yeah,
saying
the
yes in the moment.
and the absolute burnout that comes along with that and illness and all those things, right? So over time, I've definitely learned the power of the word no for sure, right? Especially as a projector and having to like protect my energy for the things that actually matter to me.
Mhm.
Because I will get caught up in a train of you know, doing the things that everyone else wants or expects or um kind of pushes me towards. I guess not even really pushes because I just like initially I feel that same excitement towards it, it's not until I've actually processed it that I understand that it's not something I want to do, or that it doesn't, go along with what I do want to do in the future, or how I want to live my life, or whatever, right? So I can get caught up in the moment, and it takes me a little while to figure that out. And if I don't figure that out, that's when I get into the lows, the bitterness and the anger and the I don't know, just really shitty place for sure. Or if I do figure it out and I push through it anyway, that's the worst.
Do you feel open to share about your Uranus opposition?
Mm.
AKA
Yeah.
when, can we ask you questions about
Yeah. Yeah.
that? Um,
Yeah.
Teresa, I was in it, so I want you to ask the question.
Yeah.
Questions.
Well, so you went through your Uranus opposition officially in 2022. And for those that don't know, your Uranus opposition, to put it simply, is a period of time in your life where everything that's no longer working for you will come to a head and you have to face it. So, what I noticed with what Andy went through, which was a health crisis, was you basically had to sit and be still with yourself and face yourself and your life. And that was your only option. There was no other
Yeah.
option.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you want to talk about what happened to you and what that was like?
And
Yeah.
real quick, and for a lot of projectors, what I notice is themes that I've seen with other projectors that have gone through it. It's like if you're not living as a projector, whether you know about human design or not, which means understanding your capacity, it's like you got to be a projector.
Yeah. Or it'll kick the shit out of you. Yeah.
Did it kick the shit out of you?
It did. Yeah, it did. I think it was before 22, right? Or
Yeah, it was in
leading
22. It was in
into.
Probably
20.
leading
Yeah, it
up.
was leading up to. Yep.
Yeah. So it would have been right at my 40th birthday, right? Yeah. Right after 41st.
40th, 42nd.
42nd? Jesus. What year is it? Anyway.
Like, how old am I?
You're 44.
Yeah. Yeah. So so um I guess I'll kind of preface this with, at the time I was overworking myself. I was overextending myself. I was doing a lot of things that really weren't, very projectory for sure. Um, and I was kind of, getting fed up with life and how it was, and I felt like I needed a change anyway. It was not how I expected that to happen, but it did. And so you have to do what you have to do, right? So it was the weekend of my birthday. I got COVID, and COVID really kicked the shit out of me. Like, I was down and out for a good, I think, 10 days. I was hiding basically quarantined, I guess would be the word, to a room in my basement. Um, I didn't sleep. I couldn't hardly eat. I was just really, really, really feeling it. And
I
then,
want to interject real quick
yeah,
and say that for in human design, in your environment is where we need to be when we need to heal. And I quarantined him down to a cave, and he's valleys, and he would come upstairs and be in the living room for a little bit and say, I feel so much better when I'm up here, because we had like vaulted ceilings. So valleys is very acoustic. He would be like, oh, I feel so much better. And I'd be like, go back downstairs. Totally ignoring the environment. Anyways, let you continue.
right. So, anyway, as I was starting to kind of come out of that and starting to feel a little bit better, I was having trouble sleeping. Well, I guess let's kind of preface this. No, this is still in order, right? I'm trying to go in chronological order here. So as I was coming out of that and starting to heal with that, I was starting to have trouble like breathing, like to the point where it was really shallow, like super, super shallow. And so I ended up having the COVID ended up turning into very severe pneumonia. And after, I don't even know, 5 or 6 days of that, we ended up at the doctor. I was doing IVs, zinc and vitamin C and a whole
Yeah, you
bunch
got
of
antibiotics for the pneumonia. Yeah.
concoctions and stuff leading up to that. So I had the pneumonia, I had all these IVs, I had COVID. We finally end up at the doctor and they ended up prescribing antibiotics, which I did end up taking. And I did end up getting like through the pneumonia. And then a few days later, Brandy and I were standing in our hallway and talking. I don't remember what or why, but we were standing there and our son kind of walked through and I kind of tried to step away to just kind of let him pass through or step out of the way. And I lost like I don't know, I kind of fell backwards instead of kind of stepping away. And it ended up like leaning against a wall. And my legs just started shaking like uncontrollably. And I just started feeling incredibly weak. So I kind of made my way back to my cave, and just kind of went with it, I guess, and slept that night. And then the next morning, it was happening in my entire body. My hands were trembling, my legs were trembling, my lungs were trembling. I could barely walk.
Your diaphragm.
Yeah, it's just like when I was breathing, it was vibrating, it was tremoring. Um, couldn't I did make it upstairs, and I think that was the last time I made it up the stairs for a very long time. Um,
It was the day you were supposed to go back to work. You had come upstairs to make your coffee and your water, and you were walking semi-normal, and you were trying to go down the stairs, and I was behind you, and you were like, take my coffee, and I grabbed your coffee, and you held
yeah,
onto the railing. Yeah.
yeah. Hmm. I don't know. I don't remember all
Yeah.
the specifics, I guess,
So
necessarily having
yeah, then we were
gone
like, we
through
need to
it.
go to the doctor.
Yeah. So yeah, we went to the hospital.
We,
We
we went
went.
to the
Oh no,
doctor
yeah, we went to the
first
doctor first. Yep, yep.
to make sure. And
And
she's like, I don't know, maybe you're having a stroke. So
yeah,
we
so
got you
she
some aspirin and sent us to the
sent us to the hospital. Yep.
hospital.
Well, we ended up getting in, checked into the ER. They, you know, had no idea exactly what was happening at first. They had asked me about all the things. Did you get the COVID shot? Have you done all this and that? And I guess they emphasized repeatedly, did you get the COVID shot? And at that time, I mean, I had not, right?
Making
So
sure it wasn't a side effect.
yeah, they were very concerned about that. And I guess the doctors that we had seen had kind of seen similar types of things before. But yeah, we get to the ER. They're concerned about it being like this Guillain-Barré or Guillain-Barre or whatever that is. They're concerned about it possibly being like spinal meningitis. They're doing all these things. They're questioning all these things. Um, Ended up spending 3 full days in the hospital. They did a spinal tap. They did multiple CT scans. They did multiple CAT scans, and nothing came up. They couldn't find anything. I talked to their neurological specialists. They sent my paperwork off to the best hospital in the state, which here happens to be the University of Iowa. Um, they could find nothing. I'm laying in the bed for the third day. I can kind of make it to the bathroom by myself on a walker, and I can go in and I can't sit because my legs give out about halfway through, so I walk in and I lean over and I just fall, and that's the best I can do. The third day of them running tests and having no answers, and having them not seeming like they have any hope for answers, right? They don't have any inkling of what's going on. I finally just asked them, I'm like, is there any reason for me to stay here?
Well, and
Um,
and you had a DO, which there's MDs and
yes.
DOs, and I have a friend that does muscle testing, like for conditions in the body and things like that. She has a practice here in Des Moines, and I had her remotely test him, and she's like, he's coming up with like, what was it? Zinc, too
Think,
much zinc. It's depleting copper. And so the doctor came in and he was a DO, and I recognized that. So I thought he'd be a little bit more open to the conversation. And I was like, what if he had depleted copper? And he's like, absolutely. This would make sense. We'll take some blood and send it to Mayo and send you guys home and go make an appointment with the neurologist. And the first appointment with the neurologist was
three and a
three
half
months,
months later,
3.5
something.
months
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
Like, well, it's a good thing that we have access to other tools and believe that we can get things done a different way.
Yeah, because by the
Yeah.
time that appointment came, were you better already?
The neurological appointment, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No.
yeah.
I,
It was the day of, because you had pushed it back a week.
oh, they had pushed it back.
They had pushed
And
it
they had
back a
actually
week.
pushed it back several weeks because it was originally like the end of December and they ended up pushing it back till almost February.
I don't know, but
The universe was like, nope,
yeah.
you're not using this doctor.
Yeah.
So for 3 months, Andy couldn't walk on his own. Or 2 months, I should say, because then we found Katie Cass, who is a neurokinetic therapist, and she's fantastic.
Yeah. We
But
found a lot of things.
we found a lot of things. We did a lot of stuff, just a lot of weird stuff that people might, turn their head to or think like that's not going to work. But I think from my perspective, and Andy, you can share yours, obviously, it happened to you, was that your body was just like, we can't go forward the way that we were going forward because you weren't able to work for those 3 months. So you had
No,
to do nothing.
I couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
I couldn't walk. My hands shook so bad that I couldn't feed myself anything beyond like a sandwich that I could like, just
Hmm.
manage to jam into my mouth. Um, I couldn't make food. I could, hardly get to the restroom on my own. I couldn't shower on my own. Brandy had to
Hmm.
shower me on a chair in the bathroom. I couldn't even shampoo my own head. My hands were kind of like straight up um really shaking. They had at one point in the doctor's office or in the hospital had said something along the lines of calling it Parkinsonism or something like a similar reaction to Parkinson's disease
Huh.
and how like disabling that disease is, right? Like we've all seen, Michael J. Fox or whatever trying to
Hmm.
walk or trying to, do anything, right? Um, so I spent, yeah, multiple months not being able to do anything but sit on the couch. I couldn't make it to my bedroom. I couldn't, I slept on the couch. I sat on the couch. I ate on the couch. Um, and it kind of, man, it's, I don't know, it's a mess you up, right? You know,
Hmm.
I had always been someone who planned, right? Who prepared, who studied, who read, who made sure that no matter what happened, I would be able to get myself out of it. And I felt like I could do that in almost any situation. But the one thing I never prepared for was losing my body. Um, it's something you can't get yourself out of. So, um, did a lot of thinking, did a lot of learning. Um, Pretty tough for somebody who never sits, you know, like, and I've told people this my whole life, you know, people are always like, I'm bored. I don't have anything to do. I'm like, I'm literally never bored. There's always something going on in my head. There's always something that I can find myself doing or tinkering with or playing with. I've like, I don't know that I had ever really experienced boredom until that time, you know. And so I was me, and I'm all up in my head, and I can't do anything about it. I can't move, and I can't feed myself, and I can't make myself a meal or any of those things. So I sat and I tried to figure out what I was going to do for the rest of my life, not being able to move, you know, or not being able to. I guess I could move technically, but not accurately enough that I could manage on my own by any means.
I'd like to point out that the conscious sun of your Uranus opposition chart is gate 52, which is stillness. So that's kind of like I would argue, the most important gate of your Uranus opposition. So the biggest theme, which is stillness.
Yeah.
And who are you without, 3740, the provider, you know?
Right. I had a lot of time to experience what that was like to lose being that provider, to be, you know, and it's probably just in my head, right? But I could see the people around me, and I could, you know, see my kids, and I could see my wife, and I could see them all up and, you know, doing the things, and me not being able to do it for them or to be able to help them or to be able to provide anything at the time. It's just it's I don't know, unbearable, right?
Mm.
So we um made all the appointments with basically everything but a doctor at that point, you know. um I did see a physical therapist, but
Yeah, for craniosacral, yeah.
yeah, they specialized in things other than just strictly physical therapy. And I think that was kind of the beginning, right? That's when I started doing that, and I started seeing Hans.
Hans, yeah.
Yeah.
Hans!
um
At the Feel Good Clinic.
at the Feel Good Clinic, you
Someone
Was he a
know.
manifester?
Yes, he was a
Yes.
manifester. And yes. And he he was from Germany, and something about he
The
knew people that hung out,
Netherlands.
or Netherlands. He was in the Netherlands, and he was like, I mentioned human design, and he was like, oh yeah, I used to have coffee with a bunch of people that studied with Ra.
Yeah.
I was like,
And
what?
He was a
lived
4-6, right? Yeah. I thought he was. Fourth line?
4-6, maybe, or 2-4.
maybe
Maybe.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I don't know. He had stories. He lived down the road from Wim Hof and knew him before
Yeah.
his divorce and all before he like did all of his crazy stuff. And
Yeah, I have his chart. He's a 2-4, 1222.
2-4.
Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, obviously we didn't see him to hear all the stories, right?
He was born a day after Teresa.
I'm going to say the 1222 will tell you the stories whether you want to hear them or not. If there's energy for it, if it's open.
Yeah, you know, and like, so curiously, we go to see him, well, specifically, right, for these treatments that he does with a special machine that he invented with all this sound and vibration and stuff. But, you know, instead of just like hooking me to a machine and running this thing down my spine and all these things, he has conversations with us, right? He talks to us about the emotional things, the other things that can cause, you know, your body to kind of give out on you, right? And it almost sounded like it came from the perspective of he knew exactly who he was talking to and why.
Yep.
You know. And so yeah, so I started seeing him weekly.
Yeah, and I think it was our second visit. He was
Yeah.
like He looks at me and he's like, well, the problem is you. He's like, so we have to treat you too. And not to like, he wasn't asking for any more money. It was like, no, I have to treat you both.
Yeah. And it wasn't condescending. It wasn't
No,
mean in any way. He's
no.
just, that's just the facts.
Yeah, it
Right.
was just like the problem is like he got right to the emotional part of it. I was like, oh,
yeah.
How
yeah.
did that feel for you, Brandy, for him to say the problem is you?
Oh no, of course.
But like also it kind of makes sense just from a mechanical standpoint. Andy's on
Mhm.
your G center ride
Yeah, yeah,
and you guys are designed very differently and he's so open, he's taking you in and
yeah,
you're conditioning him the most.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
hmm
yeah. And then we met Katie Cass.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like things really like they started to move and started to change when we met him.
Oh
Right.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And it was probably, I don't know, a good month into seeing him that we met Katie.
Mm-hmm.
Hans got the ball rolling as manifestors do.
Yeah.
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 Initiated you into that whole experience of
Yeah.
tuning
Well, it
into
was
the emotional
weird.
side and working as a couple towards
Yeah.
it and all of that.
And it was this machine that he'd put up and down your spine with and have these sounds coming from this machine, and it would have this cuff he'd wrap around your arm. And
It's the weirdest experience ever. If you're ever in Des Moines, I highly recommend going to see it just for the experience. I did it and I remember walking out of there. I'm like, I have no idea what he just did to me, but I feel like I'm on cloud nine right now. No wonder they call this the feel good clinic.
Uh-huh.
I
yeah.
remember he was like, we were sitting in the waiting room and I was standing there and I'm nervous determination. I also have ADHD. I'm always fidgeting. And he just looks at me and goes, you seem nervous. I am kind of nervous. I don't know what you're going to do to me.
And then he would say, like, you might, because he was working on both of us, and he'd be like, stuff might come up for you. And I remember, like, the first, second, third week, like, we'd have these terrible arguments. They would just come out of nowhere, but they would like clear this air. And I'm like, what the hell? And then Andy would get better. What's going on?
I wonder if you were just like excavating your solar plexus and just and he's getting better because of it.
Something.
Also a
Something.
1222. I mean, emotional mutation coming in.
Right. Right.
Coming in
Well,
hot.
he's a cross of Eden, so he's also being like, oh, you thought that was good.
Oh yeah, and the Cross of Eden is all about unstable foundations and helping you create a stable foundation.
Yeah.
Like if your foundation is unstable, we will figure it out.
Yeah. So Andy had
Mhm.
lots of time to just evaluate everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how his Uranus opposition went for the question that asked. That was the question. How was your Uranus opposition for you? Well, let me
Yeah.
tell you this tale.
Yeah. It was about 5 months of hell.
And now you're like, you would never even look at you and think that ever happened. Like if you saw videos, he lost like a
I was
substantial amount of
130
weight.
pounds.
Yeah, he was 130 pounds, could hardly walk.
Yeah,
Used
you
a
were so
walker.
little.
Just, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was pretty crazy. Let's not do that again.
No.
No.
To sum it up with a bow, to tie it up, to land the plane, what would you say you learned from that?
Ooh.
A sentence or two.
Yeah. Ultimately, I feel like the biggest thing I learned was just to slow down, right? I was doing too much. I was pushing too hard. I was working too much. I was putting my effort and my feelings and my emotion and my time in all the wrong places. I was lacking that patience I speak so much of these days. you know, I feel like that kind of what got me there was, uh, in a way, trying to impose my will and then not understanding why it never worked.
Mm.
And I feel like to some extent that it was like a nervous breakdown more than anything. We never did figure anything out medically, right?
Because
We never did.
we never went back to the neurologist. We
No.
were just like, well, whatever.
Like, yeah, what the hell is it going to do at this point? I'm starting to feel better, right? I'm on a cane instead of a wheelchair or a walker. I'm feeling a
Well-
little bit better all the time at that point, right?
And now you're 100%.
Yeah,
No,
now
no
I'm
Kate, not stronger than.
yeah, I'm 150% from what I was prior to that even.
Yeah.
Can I read the Gate 52 keynotes? Because I feel like
Yes.
it's exactly what you just said.
Yes.
Temporary and self-imposed inaction for the benefit of assessment.
Okay, if you don't believe in human design, now you do.
And then the what's it called? My brain.
The line.
The up arrow.
Oh, exaltation.
Yes. Oh my God. How can I not think of that? Jesus. It's the energy for restraint, which recognizes the value of stillness and focus.
Mm.
Lessons from Uranus.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
Fuck that guy. Okay, I want to make sure we get to some of these other questions.
Yeah.
What's Amy Ruth's
As we wrap
question?
up. Hers, I feel like he kind of already answered this, but let's see if he has anything to add. Basically, in a nutshell, how do you deal with all the mental pressure that you feel?
I think the biggest thing for me is just making sure that I have a release, an outlet, right?
Outside.
Yeah.
Going outside, getting alone.
Outside. Yeah. Outside, alone time, play a lot of disc golf. I like going to the rock climbing gym, and I don't ever like call anybody. I don't invite anybody. I just go put my earbuds in, do my own thing.
We got this question a couple times, which is interesting, knowing your childhood, but if there is anything about the way you were raised or parented that feels like helped you live life as a projector.
That has helped me.
Yeah.
You were left alone.
Well,
this is true.
okay.
Yeah.
And Andy's brother's a projector. He's a 5'1", 1959.
Which is a harmonic to a 2/4.
1949. And then Andy's dad is a projector as well. And
Yeah.
Would you say your dad acted like a projector looking back, or was this is something my friend Will has said to me, that he's noticed that people who have a projector parent are kind of more, I don't remember how he phrased it, but kind of just like more aligned or more self-aware. But I don't know, did your dad act like a projector from your perspective or help you out?
I never really thought about it, I guess, before this moment, but like looking back on it, yeah, he really did. He was never somebody that got he never got overly excited or angry or any of those things, but like if you did something wrong, you definitely knew it, and he would kind of almost felt like you got the third degree because he was asking you these questions. You're like, God, just fucking leave me alone, right?
Penetrating you.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay,
also,
cool. So even though you
probably, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, you go.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and also probably not knowing human design, but having 5 sons, it's like maybe thinking they're all generators.
I mean, probably thought he was too, right? He's
Well,
still
yeah,
kind of,
yeah.
yeah. Still kind of acts like it. But the other thing I guess I really think back and realize is the guidance that I got from my dad. It's definitely something I didn't have on like my mom and stepdad's side, but he taught me so much stuff, building houses and building cars and fixing things and like everything.
He kind of guided your trajectory.
Jump-started my curiosity in a lot of things. Yeah.
That's really cool. So it's like he may have not even realized he was really doing that from a conscious place, but
no, I think it's just he liked doing it, so I helped. I was just there, so he showed me.
Okay, that also answers the other question. It was, how supportive were your parents growing up with respect to being a projector?
I mean, I guess considering none of us knew any of this, it's hard to put a label on it saying in respect to being a projector. Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess my dad being a projector kind of formed a lot of who I am and how I act in the world. But he wasn't doing it intentionally either. So,
Mm-hmm.
Here's a good one from Carla. What's the most important bargain or promise you want honored? We talk about this, Andy, for reference, with defined egos.
mhm.
You and I both have them. We have bargains. Just for you in general, what's the most important bargain you want honored?
I would say, yeah, the first word that pops to head in my mind is like respect, like mutual respect. I think that that's a bargain that we
Yeah.
have. And obviously, it's something that's also earned, right? But I think we've been through that. And I feel like that we owe each other respect.
Keynote for the
Probably
3740, maybe.
you probably look for that at work too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a very practical one. Job hunting for projectors, how to make yourself available for invitations from another 2-4.
Hmm.
The
Um,
hermits.
so I would say job hunting for projectors. What I ended up doing the last time that I was job hunting is I got one of those headhunter agencies to do it for me, right? And kind of described to them what I wanted and how I wanted to feel and what I was looking for. And then they brought me prospects, kind of almost like, hey, here's what I see looks like a good fit for you. What do you think? Right. And then I would from there kind of whittle it down and go into the interview feeling invited almost, right? Like, because they found the thing and they're like, this looks like a good opportunity for you. Right.
They
So,
recognized you.
yeah. So I feel like
And they
that's
did the
a,
work for you, so that's also
yeah.
efficient.
Yeah. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great advice.
Oh, on the work subject, real quick, can we talk about projector demands?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's a question around that you have floating
The,
around?
just the awareness around the power of projector demands. Andy got a new job position last year, I think it was.
Mhm. Yeah.
And they were just kind of willy-nilly like, here you go, here's your job here's your job description, but here's your new title. And I was like, oh,
It
wait.
wasn't even that. I had a meeting with my boss and we sat down at a table across from each other and he didn't even really explain why we were having a meeting, but he slid a piece of paper across the desk that had my new like contract on it, my new salary and bonus structure and all these things. And I was like, all right. So I didn't get a new job description. It didn't have the number on it that I had expected. And it, a couple of things, right? Kind of caught me off guard. So I took it home and Brandy and I kind of had a conversation about it. And after talking, I sat down and I wrote an email to my boss and his boss and was kind of just laid out my terms. I was like, this isn't the number I was thinking. I want to see a job description. And I also want to know if I can hire someone to replace my position because the job I was being offered was a management position. And when that's going to happen, and if it's not going to happen, which projects are off the board for this year. So,
And you also made sure your tribe was taken care of because you said no one on my team is going to work more than 40 hours.
yeah. Yeah, that we're done with that. We need help and support going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And how'd that work out? Asking for those things.
Worked out perfectly, exactly like I had hoped it would.
Perfect. So projectors make more demands, especially if you're working for a corporation that has billions and billions of dollars.
Yes.
They can make
Right.
it happen.
They can. Yep. And chances are, if they're offering it to you to begin with, you've already proved that you're worth it.
Spoken like a defined ego.
What would you say to a projector that maybe either has never worked in corporate or has been burned by corporate before that is considering getting into the corporate world?
Mm. Specifically for a projector, I would say focus on something that you enjoy and learn everything you can about it. I know you're going to do it anyway, right? So when you walk into that situation, you'll be the one that knows everything. You'll be the one that people start coming to and asking the questions and asking for guidance. And from there you can kind of build that, right? Don't walk in there demanding hundreds of thousands of dollars. Walk in there demanding what you want to do every day.
That was great advice. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's probably an excellent place to end. And also, we didn't tell him to say that, you guys. He just knew
No.
that. He didn't need to be coached on what it means to be a projector. That's how his life has played out.
Yeah, that's why we wanted to have you on, Andy, because you're
Mhm.
just so good at naturally just being a projector.
Oh, thanks.
Snaps for Andy, everybody.
Right. Well, thank you for having me on. That was fun.
Thanks for
Yeah.
coming on. This has been fun to interview you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know. I think that's
Yeah.
it.
Maybe it'll
Okay.
trigger me to learn more about human design at some point.
Hey, maybe. Sounds like you don't really need it. Sounds like you're doing great without
Yeah,
it. But,
you're doing.
Human Design Coffee Talk can be your go-to source for.
Oh, perfect.
We're going to have educational episodes coming out.
Yeah, we are. And he has talked about taking foundational courses just to help him with coaching.
Ooh,
To,
Amy Lee and John Cole.
Yeah. Yeah.
You would love them.
So,
Yeah.
Human Design Collective. If you're a
Yeah.
projector, go to them for your foundation courses.
also, Andy's a real good projector. He's not on social media.
So we're not going to ask him where you can reach out to him and find
Because
him
you
and
can't.
annoy him.
No, I'm just kidding.
You can't. You can't.
You cannot get him to respond.
No, he does have a social media account, but I think it only has a picture of a steak on it. Like
That's
Which-
been on there for 15 years.
We call
Yeah.
the 3740 the channel of steak, by the way.
yes,
So,
we call. Yep. So it's very appropriate.
Again, if you don't believe in human design. And also, I have two 3740 parents that keep trying to tantalize my 3740 husband to come over for a steak dinner. At the moment, they're trying to court him into coming over.
Yeah, that's how we tantalize from afar. As I send you guys pictures of steak in our group text,
and my husband gets very excited by that.
Because fun fact is, not only are Teresa and I were we Insta best friends, but when our husbands met each other, they just meshed, and now we can all hang out, and we don't have to like try to be like, what are the husbands gonna do? They just
Just
Andy went
besties.
down there and visited him without me.
Yeah.
Like we did a spouse swap. Andy went down to Phoenix and Teresa came to Iowa. And so
It was so cute the other day. I don't know what we were talking. We were talking about like friendships and whatnot. And Thomas is like, yeah, I don't really feel like I have like emotionally close or emotionally supportive friends except for Andy. And I was like, oh. So, keynoting your
Yeah.
chart for you.
Nice.
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, thanks
right.
for listening. We'll see you in the next episode, folks.